Since 2003, this is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
The Sports Source is presented by Junk Be Gone, Pipe Wrench, and the Garza Law Firm.
The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for today's edition of the Sports Source. 94 minutes of Tennessee talk, and there's plenty to cover today. We got the Lady Vols in the College World Series. They play later this afternoon right here on WATE. You got the Vol baseball team in regional action right now, and we got three VFLs on the show today to talk about the baseball team, what they've got coming up, what the path to Omaha looks like from here. The SEC meetings have come and gone. We'll discuss what went on there, and also everyone from SEC coaches to NFL coaches are talking about Josh Heupel'S program. Some of it good, some of it bad. We'll discuss and catch you up on all of that in today's show. Let's just jump right into it because it is such a packed show. First segment brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. When you're in need of an attorney, it can be a scary time. Most folks don't know the intricacies of the law. So you're really putting your faith, your whole life in someone else's hands, and that can worry you. Well, that's why it's important to make the call to Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. Local, proven, and determined to take good care of you. Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm, that's who you need to call. Check them out, garzalaw.com. All right, want to welcome in the first wave of panelists right over here. Hey, fresh off hosting last week, another great job. I love it when I can just leave the show in Josh's hands. Josh Ward. Josh, thanks for being here.
I was just trying to not get canceled, and here we are this week, so it's a success.
That's my job. You're fine. It's when I'm hosting that we're in trouble. Vince Ferrara right here. Vince, thanks for being back.
Appreciate it.
Paige Dauer right there. Thank you.
Of course.
And right there, Jimmy Hyams. The two of you, of course, do a podcast together, a YouTube channel, Full Disclosure Pro. So folks can check that out. And I know you had a lot of SEC meeting stuff up there. Of course, you're covering.
I put him on the road this time.
That was pretty good. All right, very good.
Follow instructions.
So the SEC spring meetings have come and gone. We'll just start with you, Jimmy. They've come and gone. Did we leave with a better grasp of what the next playoff format will be? No. Did we leave with an answer as to whether or not the Tennessee, the SEC is going to go to an 8 or a 9 game schedule? No. So, Jimmy, what did we accomplish at the SEC meetings? What did Greg Sankey and the crew come up with?
They didn't, but I got 29 interviews, so the heck with them.
There you go.
I could tell on Monday when Greg Sankey met with the media before the spring meetings start, they weren't going to decide any of this. There were some other reporters that said, they're going to make a decision on 8 or 9 games. And the reason they're holding back, a big reason is they don't have directive on the college football playoff format. 12 teams, 14 teams, 16 teams. Are you going to continue to reward one-loss record over strength of schedule? They don't have those answers. And so that's what's holding them back. And also, within the SEC, within the conference, athletic directors want one thing, the coaches want another. And so you got to come on the same page here. The one thing I do think will happen is that we will have a 16-team playoff.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the only thing that came out of that, wasn't voted on. But, yeah, they didn't vote on anything other than finding you $500,000 if you storm a court.
That's it. That's the deal. If you storm the field, it's $500,000 now, which isn't going to stop anybody. When you look at some of the things Jimmy talked about there, coaches and ADs, let's start there with people not agreeing. Basically, you had this move, it looked like, toward 4 automatic bids that the SEC and the Big Ten were going to go for. And then they went and spoke to the coaches, and the coaches made it pretty clear, no. We want it more equitable. Let's do 5 conference champions get in, and then it's just the next 11 best teams. Okay. The problem is your ADs don't want that. There's more money if you can do the 4-game thing and the 4 automatic bids and then turn that into play-in games. And then the other aspect of that is the athletic directors are good with a 9th game because that's more money. And the coaches, they don't want a 9th game because that's another loss. So you've got ADs here, coaches here. Surprised by the split at all? Not necessarily in the 8 or 9, but the playoff surprised me a little bit. The coaches were better with 5 games than they were getting automatic bids for the conference.
Yeah, I thought that's what was probably the most noteworthy out of the week, that I thought they would have gone in kind of aligned of, hey, this is what we want for the conference, and then you would find out there's an SEC Big Ten alignment in wanting the automatic qualifying spots because they'd get more than the Big 12 and the ACC. So the Big 12 probably came out of SEC meetings happy because they also want the 5+11 format, which is simply five automatic qualifiers, your conference champs, and then 11 at-large positions. SEC coaches are probably confident that they can get 5-6 teams, which they probably could with 16 spots. So I'm not surprised to hear that coaches want that. I was a little surprised to see the split opinion between the coaches and the ADs.
Well, so many of these scenarios have caveats to them. Yeah, the other conferences, the Big 12 and the ACC, they're good with 5+11 having it be wide open, but only if the SEC stays at 8 conference or moves to 9 conference games. But the SEC would only do that if it's 8. You know, so everybody's kind of got this in terms of their hypotheticals, and it makes it even more muddier waters than it already is.
Well, and even go ahead.
Well, I just think it's interesting just how much, the commissioners or ADs aren't necessarily in alignment with the coaches. I think even Brian Kelly, who you talked to at the spring meetings, was another outlier who wanted the 9 conference games plus an out-of-conference matchup, too. I think it was with the Big Ten.
Correct.
And, of course, maybe they're not going to want that, too. So I just thought that part was interesting. But I think the 9 conference games probably is the right move to go. I don't think many people will get up for your UTEP game. So I think if you can get another conference game in there, you talk about revenue sharing, that probably is the right move down the road.
The one thing that surprises me is if you've ever worked in a company, and now I do my own thing here, but I've worked in companies before, and there was nothing worse than the management meetings, and you'd go in there and you would pray that everybody's got their stuff in order. You got 1 hour, you're hoping, and it would never be this way. You'd go in, you'd sit down, and this guy didn't talk to his department. This guy hasn't talked to his department yet. She hasn't talked to her department yet. So it's like, what are we doing in here? I kind of feel that way with this SEC meeting. It's like, could the coaches and ADs not even get on the same page before going down there? Could they just say, hey, unified front, let's do this? And instead it's like, I don't know, let's see what happens. They just go down there and it's like a day trip, and what do you think? I don't know. It's like they've given no prep to this before the meetings.
John, it's interesting you'd say that because Sankey was very frustrated that the College Football Playoff Committee has not gathered their information and come up with a plan yet. Yet within his own conference, the coaches and ADs are not on the same page necessarily. The interesting thing about the 5-11 format is that if you had that in place last year with the 16-team playoff, the SEC had 6 teams in it. Okay. And they also did a survey over the last 10 years. The last 10 years, under that format, and you just went by AP rankings, the SEC would have had 5 to 7 teams every year, 5 to 7 teams. So that's why the coaches are saying we're confident we can get in there with that format.
Well, and you also had, as Paige said, Brian Kelly, who threw out his idea. Lane Kiffin threw out an idea. Was it Hugh Freeze that came up with let's have the top 8 in the Big Ten play the top 8 in the SEC for the right to play in the playoff? So you'd be getting 8 between those 2 conferences. But everybody has their own plan. Again, it's like there's no need for this. That should have been worked out with your athletic director. The athletic director then goes and talks to the SEC group as a whole, and we handle it. One of the problems you're running into is the SEC wants the college football playoff. And is anybody more powerful than Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti in terms of him being unhappy with the college football playoff? No one's got more power than him and Petitti, so maybe get on that, Greg. But one of the things that stands out is, okay, we're not going to do this with our schedules until you give us a playoff format. And on the other hand, it's we're not going to come up with the playoff format until you do this with your schedules.
Right.
Someone at some point is just going to have to hold their nose and make a move. And right now, everybody's just waiting to let the other guy do something first.
I think even more than just the format, it's what Greg Sankey was talking about is how do you determine what is valued for the College Football Playoff Committee? So you mentioned it, Jimmy. So are you valuing strength of schedule? Are you valuing just wins? He said, well, you could schedule, easily to get wins if that's what we're valuing. But I don't think we got that kind of clarity. So we're contingent on what we want to do based on that, but then we don't have clarity on that. So the format, you don't know what's being emphasized. They're not on the same page. So yeah, we took some steps back.
And I think you can tell he was frustrated with the strength of schedule argument because when you were there, he was talking about Nebraska canceling on Tennessee and not wanting that. And if you just want to average it out to, 65 is your strength of schedule and so forth and so on. So I think that should end up being the main thing that indicates your seeding in the playoffs and where you're ranked when it's over.
Yeah, let me take that 65 to a further point. Sankey said a member of the committee told him that if you play number 1 and number 130, your average schedule is 65 and a half. So you're better off playing number 65 and 66, okay? Yeah. Because if you go 2-0 against those teams and 1-1, losing to number 1, then the 2-0 team is going to be in better shape.
Last year, they showed that it's about the record as opposed to who you played.
So basically, that suggestion is why play a tough schedule, which is a bad message in my opinion.
I'll let you finish, Josh.
Well, the SEC's been having this 8 or 9 game conference schedule for how many years now? This predates Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league. Jimmy, 2-3 years ago, you're covering the spring meetings, and that was one of the big topics.
Yes.
Are they going to do 9 games or stay at 8? They went with the short-term plan for last year and this year, where they set the schedule and then reversed it home and away. But the SEC's been having this conversation for half a decade. And we don't seem any closer than we were in 2020, 2021 when we were having the same conversation.
And I give credit to the Big Ten. They don't do this. They just went in and made a decision. And then they added 2 other teams. Washington and Oregon came in and they said, all right, we're going to come up with a new schedule plan. Boom. What did it take? 2 weeks? They cranked that out. And they went with a more nuanced plan, too. I'm no fan of the Big Ten, but come on, Sankey, get your house in order. They know how to say, we got 18 teams. That's not even. How do we do this? And they also looked at it and said, well, this team has 3 real rivals. This team doesn't have any. So we're going to create a schedule that keeps this team's rivals alive, and this team just gets a total rotation. The SEC can't come up with that? Maybe the Big Ten is better academically. Okay, when we come back, all that talk of Tennessee going alone and the SEC evicting them, yeah, that's not happening. The Tennessee has come along and said that they told Yahoo Sports that we're going to sign the agreement. We'll go along with the House settlement. So much ado about nothing, or much ado until the House settlement gets blown up by lawsuit. Come on back, we'll discuss that, and then we'll get into UT Sports, I promise. Getting the business out of the way first. Go on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Heins Company. Gordon, Anna, Jacob, Alex. You might as well get to know the Heins family by their first names, because once you walk through the doors down there at A.G. Heins Company, you're treated like family. For the best building materials and tools, start your home improvement project on Hines Street, downtown Knoxville. A.G. Heins Company. They've been doing it since 1920. That's 105 years. And I'm not great academic in terms of my academics when I was in school, but I can add that up. 105 years. You don't get there unless you are a spectacular business and a tremendous family-run business. aghines.com to learn more. Okay, 2 weeks ago on this show, we laughed at an Alabama fan website that suggested Tennessee should be thrown out of the SEC because of the new law that was passed in this state, saying that that schools in this state don't have to go along with any of the rules set forth by the House settlement, which still isn't settled and probably won't last, once it is settled, it won't last long. Regardless, this guy said throw them out. We all ha-ha'd. Then about 3 days later, the news comes out that, oh no, the power conferences are putting together a memo, a deal that everyone has to sign, or else you're out. So then people started talking about, well, we'll just go to the Big Ten. It's like, no. You're out. None of these teams will play you. Yeah. You'll be playing Kent State, although maybe Danny White would like that, judging by the way he schedules. So Tennessee, though, came out this week, according to Ross Dellinger, and it's the only quote. There was no story attached to it. It was simply a quote, and we can go ahead and put it up on screen here, that he said, Tennessee Chancellor Donda Plowman tells Yahoo Sports that her school does plan to sign the House settlement-related affiliation agreement. And Josh, Greg Sankey made the same kind of comment at SEC meetings this week. Yeah, saying that all 16 SEC schools did agree to the affiliation agreement, as well as to, quote, alter or clarify state laws that might contradict the House settlement, which would be an indication that that's Tennessee. Yes, exactly. and you do have other states that are going down the path to create their own laws like that. But still, for those who are like, yeah, we'll take on all comers, that's not this. Tennessee's kind of backed down, if you will. But it's the only thing you can do. You know, if everyone's saying we won't play you if you don't agree to this, Well, you're an idiot if you don't agree to it. So I have no problem with Don Plowman and UT backing down. I kind of expected this. Didn't think the SEC would want. I didn't think it would get to the point where the SEC would actually say, "Well, you're out," and I didn't think Tennessee would say, "Yeah, we'll not take your money. We'll go away." So I'm not surprised that it came out this way. Do you think there'll be any kind of disappointment from the fans who just like the idea of taking on a fight with anyone out there?
Well, I'm sure some, but I'm not necessarily surprised either. I would have thought maybe this would go on a little bit longer, but they did have the meeting, so something probably needed to come together. And I know last segment we talked about the division that seems to exist with different opinions in the conference, but Donnie Plowman's in a leadership position in the SEC. I doubt that she wanted to be fighting with Greg Sankey. I doubt Danny White wants to fight with Greg Sankey and the league and other administrators. So if you didn't have other schools that were doing the same thing, or states, meaning the schools that are doing the same thing, then that's probably not a fight that was worth it for Tennessee. There'll be another fight in the future if this house settlement thing gets taken on, but they can take that on together when they get to that point.
Agree. At this point, I mean, I understand we don't want to get sued. It's kind of the gist of this. If we do this, we're a public institution, could someone sue us? But the bottom line is everyone's getting on the same page and we'll all be sued together, I guess. I would rather be in the boat than outside the boat, Vince, so I got no problem with what they've done. I think it makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think the allegations or the reporting that they would get kicked out, the SEC or anybody else, it was just a farce. So
but the threat was there. If you're passing around a memo that says everybody better sign, there is a memo that everybody has to sign.
No, I agree that it was there, but I didn't think we'd get to that point.
Yes.
And yeah, it makes more sense. And look, the presidents are the ones that don't want any part of a fight with the SEC, including Don Plowman and the chancellors, of course. It's different than the ADs and the coaches. They're not on the same page with what they're discussing, but obviously this is one that makes a lot of sense to kind of follow along. And then, yeah, you're going to have more things to deal with. You don't want to have to fight that right now.
Yeah, I think if there was a surprise, it was the fact that there was this piece of paper that was being put together. Again, we laughed at the idea of Tennessee or anybody else being thrown out, only to find out that, no, we are kind of doing a handshake agreement here, or putting in writing that we all play by the same rules, whatever the House settlement comes up with. That was the surprise. Not that Tennessee would walk back and say, all right, cool our heads, let's be smart here. It's better to be part of the group than by ourselves. It was the fact that there was any discussion of this in the first place, and the fact that it went as far as you won't be allowed to play anyone in these power conferences if you go in that direction. That was rather shocking, in fact, to me.
Yeah, I was pretty stunned when I saw that, because there didn't seem to be any wiggle room in what the affiliate agreement said. And now we just get back to kind of the tired waiting game of the House settlement. A month from today is when the new revenue share plan is supposed to go into effect, July 1. So we have a month to go, and we still don't know exactly what it's going to mean for the long term because of all the speculation and the doubts that are still around the House settlement. Okay, get this through Judge Claudia Wilken, and if she finally approves it and it's done, what does that mean for the future? Nobody seems to know, because there will be at some point a fight over NIL and trying to police that. Yeah,
I mean, it should be, let's say it finishes a month from now, then a month and a day from now is when they're going to start taking on lawsuits over it. The incredible thing is, as disconnected as everything else in the sports world seems to be, that everyone got connected enough to say, we're all agreeing to this or you're out. That was it's about the only thing that apparently all these schools can agree on.
At some point, maybe they collectively go after trying to figure out a collective bargaining agreement in the future, because that is something Danny White has been on record that they will need.
And he may be more so than any athletic director in the country, and I give him credit for that, a lot of credit. He seems to be willing to say, look, the House thing probably isn't going to hold.
Yeah.
We need to collectively bargain this thing. And there are a lot of people that don't want to do that. And I give him credit for at least seeing the writing on the wall and admitting, hey, look, stop ignoring. There's writing on that wall over there. Because a lot of these people are acting like it's not there.
Don Plowman agreed with him.
Yeah. And you got good leadership at Tennessee. All right. When we come back, is it now or never for the Lady Vols? They got a game at 3 o'clock right here on WATE. This is the 9th trip to the College World Series for Karen Weekly. At some point, does she get thrown into that Rick Barnes zone of can't win the big one? Come on back on the Sports Source. We'll talk about that. Welcome back. This segment of the Sports Source brought to you by River Cove Campground, Uncle Jim's River Cove Campground. Of course, if you want the nicest campground and RV park, then get up to Uncle Jim's River Cove Campground on the Little Pigeon River. Dog park, picnic tables, fire pits, charcoal grills, golf carts, coin laundry, bathhouse, stock camp store, playground. It's everything you could need. Visit the website. Check out the map of the place that they have on the website, and you'll see, oh, well, here's the fun house, here's the fire pits, here's everything, dog walk. It's fantastic. Just check it out, rivercovecampground.com. See for yourself. I can't do justice to it in terms of words, so check it out on your own. You'll be impressed, I swear. All right, back with Jimmy Hyams and Paige Dauer. The Lady Vols will be playing at 3 o'clock today on WATE. They've got UCLA. UCLA outlasted Texas Tech yesterday. This is the 9th trip to the College World Series for Karen Weekly. She made it in 5, 6, and 7, 10, 12, 13, and 15, and now 23 and 25. But you're coming out of the loser's bracket.
Right.
You've still got Oklahoma hanging around, even though Texas beat them. You've still got Oklahoma out there. What are the odds at this point, Paige? How do you feel good about that? How do you feel about this team at this point?
They make it to the title series or past UCLA?
That they win the thing.
Oh, gosh. We were talking in the break about this, too. I think the greatest benefit for the Lady Vols in the World Series is that they faced so many of these teams. They faced UCLA earlier this season.
Lost to them 4-3 earlier in the year.
Right, but they were leading 3-0 until I think the bottom of the 4th, and you give up a 4 spot, and then you swept or beat Oklahoma. You beat Texas, so you have that experience. You were about to beat Oklahoma to start the Women's College World Series, and then the walk-off 3-run home run by Ella Parker just kind of gut-punched everybody. But I think going back into this game, I think it's a huge game against UCLA because Karen Weekly has talked so much this season about how that was like a learning lesson for her. You know, they get in a bit of a jam. You want to leave Carlin Pickens in there because she wants the ball in those moments. She can get you out of those types of pickles. Obviously, against Oklahoma, she kind of failed in that moment just maybe because of whether you wanted to walk her or not, or you loaded the bases in the top frame and weren't able to do anything. But with the arms that they have and the way that the bats have really come alive here in the last handful of games, you can even look in the regionals and super regionals, I could say they could get past UCLA, but then it's tough because you are in the losers brackets. You got to beat Texas twice if you want a chance to get to the finals. But I like their chance to at least get to the semifinals.
Okay.
After that, I think it gets a little dicey, even though they have that experience. But
Jimmy, the interesting thing, and I think it's the biggest reason is just the popularity of the two sports. But Rick Barnes takes so much heat. You can't win the big one. Karen Weekly's been to the World Series. This is their 9th trip, and it looks like she's not going to win it this year. We'll see. We'll see. But as you say, coming out of loser's bracket is tough. You have another idea as to why maybe people are more forgiving. And here's, just to be clear, I'm not saying they need to run her off. I'm the opposite. I think if you're going to 9 College World Series, you got a good program, and you don't touch it. You just keep supporting that coach.
And all 9 are in her tenure.
Absolutely. So I have no problem supporting her. However, fans out there give it to Barnes. They don't give it to her. I think it's because the popularity of basketball outweighs softball, but you have another take on that as well.
Well, no, I think your take is correct also, but I would add that I think that people view baseball and softball, if you get to the College World Series or the Women's College World Series, that's tantamount to a Final Four. I think that's the way people look at it because it's at the same venue. Everybody's together, and so it really is tantamount to the Elite Eight, right?
Exactly.
Because it is 8 teams, but you're going to the same destination, and so I think a lot of people view a World Series as tantamount to a Final Four. And so I think that's why Karen Weekly's given a little bit more of a leash than Rick Barnes.
I don't disagree with you. I just think that's kind of silly. I think you're right, but I think it's kind of silly because it is 8 versus 4. I mean, so if they had taken the Elite Eight to one venue, if they called it the World Series of basketball and they took the 8 teams to one venue, people wouldn't be complaining that Rick Barnes can't win the big one. It's like, well, he arrived. It's just kind of silly that you're okay to be one of the top 8 in baseball or softball. That's paramount. But it takes top 4 in basketball.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest difference, too, is, I mean, you look to Alabama's team with Nate Oates. I mean, they got rings for making it to the Final Four. So I think it's a little bit different. Right. So you're not going to get a ring because you make it to the Women's College World Series.
Unless Butch Jones is coaching.
I mean, maybe. But I saw an interesting stat, too. Like, when Tennessee was in the opening day, 90% of the national champions stay in the winner's bracket. So it's a daunting task for them to come out of that. And Karen Weekly even talked after the Super Regionals, after they were able to get back after, I think it was Nebraska, that it's the toughest part of the season to get out of Supers. I don't know if you would say it's the toughest part of the season to get past the Sweet 16, maybe the Elite Eight, but no, I don't really think it's maybe apples to oranges when you compare Final Four Women's College World Series.
I think they are equipped to win it. Not sure that they will. I would doubt it because of the losers bracket.
It's just
thing.
very tough. You have to beat somebody twice just to get to that final series.
And Texas is really good.
Yeah.
And so now if you can get back Texas, then you may be facing Oklahoma again. But you beat both of those during the regular season in 2 out of 3 series, which is pretty impressive. It was on the road, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it was, Florida the next game, and how they looked in that game. I mean, that was a tough turnaround for them to make, too, especially in the way that they lost their first game.
Yep.
But I think, you only have 5 seniors. All things being equal, I think Carlin Pickens will be coming back. You have your Taylor Panel, who leads the team in hits. She'll be back. Yeah. I mean, you'll miss Sophia Nugent with her 17 home runs, but I don't think this is the end of the road.
No. All right. 3 o'clock this afternoon, you can catch it right here on WATE. They'll be playing UCLA. The Vol baseball team doesn't play until 6 o'clock tonight. Let's talk about the Vols with 3 former Vol baseball players. A.J. Simcox, Will Heflin, and Andrew Lee are going to join me here next. We got more UT football, what SEC coaches are saying about Josh Heupel's program, what NFL coaches are saying about Josh Heupel's program. You want to stick around for those. Come on back as we talk a little baseball on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. There are a lot of critters out there that can ruin your summer fun. Ants, for one, mosquitoes, for another. Put Southeast Termite and Pest Control on the job. They'll protect your yard and your home from skeeters and all kinds of ants. I know because they take care of my house and have for many years. Good locally owned, family owned business, southeasttermite.com to learn more. All right. You can see these guys on the Sports Source Digital Network. We usually put those shows up on Tuesdays. It's a show called Hardball, and it's 3 VFL baseball players. Will Heflin right here. Will, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
A.J. Simcox, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having
me. And right
me.
there, Andrew Lee, thank you for being in here.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate all 3 of you coming in. You do a great job on the digital network where literally I wanted to just have some guys talking baseball. So we just threw them in front of camera and said, go. So they're not interrupted by a host. Today you're going to be interrupted by a host. My apologies in advance. But I want to start, we'll talk about some comments from Tony Vitello in the next segment, and then later on we'll talk a little bit about what this team still has in front of it on the path to Omaha. But I want to start with, you get the win in Game 1 over Miami of Ohio, then last night you come back, you take care of Cincinnati. A.J., what has impressed you so far? What have you seen that you've liked out of this team the last couple of games? Heck, if you want to take it back to Hoover, because they've won 4 of their last 5 now. It seems like things have turned around a little bit, evened out a little. What have you seen that's making a difference? What have you seen that you liked?
Yeah, the offense has really kind of caught their stride recently. They're putting up a lot of runs, which alleviates some of the bullpen issues and the defensive issues. They've started to hit with runners in scoring position a lot better. And, so far this weekend, they've put themselves in a tremendous spot. They won the first 2. The starting pitching, both starting pitchers have been phenomenal, and so they're in a really good spot. The defense kind of brought itself back to life a little bit last night, a little late, but I think 2 quality starts from their starters, long starts, fresh bullpen headed to into tonight. They're in a good spot.
Andrew?
My favorite part has been the stress-free games we've had. Every time Miami of Ohio or Cincinnati scored, I feel like there was a response from Tennessee. Yeah. A little bit of cruise control at the end of the games, which is always nice, especially, as A.J. mentioned, saving arms in the bullpen. And I think that's the name of the game in the postseason. Can you keep your guys for when you need them, not have to use them in the 4th, 5th inning? We still have Arvidsson available today. Nate Snead has yet to appear so far in the regional. Tegan Coons will be able to start today. So having those arms available on the back end when you really need them is what I've enjoyed the most so far.
Well, there was some debate that you guys had on your show, as a matter of fact, about who should start Game 1, who should start Game 2, especially look at Cincinnati. They steal a lot of bases. All right, do you want Phillips out there? they went with Doyle and Phillips, and Phillips looked pretty good yesterday. Things are looking better on that end. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think when Cincinnati was able to beat Wake Forest, there was a little bit of concern about the matchup, but just from the first inning on, you could see the long holds. He was mixing those up, and he just wasn't going to let him run. He actually even picked a guy off, I think the first one of the year for him. So phenomenal job of him literally growing in front of your eyes. But I think the biggest thing for Tennessee in these first two games is scoring first, keeping the crowd involved. You look across the country, it hadn't looked like that everywhere.
Yeah. Thoughts on anything else that surprised you? I mean, one of the things when you were talking about the pitching rotation and do you change anything up with your defense? You guys said Tony rides with he dances with the one that brung him, and he kind of has throughout this whole thing, and it's paid off so far. Is that a good move? That he's not somebody that's going to go willy-nilly and change based on okay, well this didn't work last week, so we're going to go it. So it seems like he's just got a pretty steady hand in terms of the way he's handling things.
And as I always play the look-ahead game. I wanted to save A.J. Russell for Game 3 today. I thought about, okay, if A.J. Russell doesn't go, maybe Arvidsson. Both of them threw last night. Yeah. Now, you look a little bit more into the details. A.J. Russell was getting hot in the 5th inning. As a guy coming off Tommy John surgery, you don't want to make him get hot last night, not go into the game, and then start a game today. So I think the commitment to making him be the next one out after Marcus Phillips made sense. And then the approach that the coaching staff has taken has obviously been, we are going to win this game. I don't care about tomorrow. Win this game. Put ourselves in that winner's bracket position. We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes. And as an onlooker, I wanted to have the grand plan,
right.
Make everything work as I wanted it. But they've had a plan very clearly. They've stuck to it, and we'll see how it unfolds today.
In terms of confidence level, I mean, they're toward the straight. You guys, as we went through the season, it was kind of they'd lose a series, and it would be, well, it's one series. Then they lose another SEC series, like, okay, well, maybe there's a little concern. By the end of the year, it's like confidence is shaken a little bit, even watching you guys watch it. Where is your confidence level now? Do you feel like they've fixed some things? Do you feel like they're firing at the right time, or is it too soon to say that?
I think it's too soon to say that. I think they're in a lot better of a position now because the offense has alleviated a lot of that pressure that they were feeling because, we have mentioned it several times on that podcast, but they have not been hitting well with runners in scoring position. The defense has been struggling, and the bullpen's been struggling. And when you have all three of those, they're all working against each other. It puts a lot of pressure on each of those to improve. Now with the offense clicking a lot better, getting runs early on the board, as Will mentioned, it does alleviate some of that, and it allows them to be more aggressive and kind of play their game a little bit more.
I think some of the things that we maybe criticized throughout the year are actually playing in their favor now that we're in postseason. We talked about it's a slow heart rate team. They seem very businesslike and under control. I think some of those things that we were asking for, maybe a little more fire, a little more emotion in the regular season, now it's playing into their hand when you do have the heightened sense of urgency with it being postseason. So I'm fully in the boat. Confidence level is extremely high.
Very good. You could be a producer because that's our next topic. Way to lead us into it. We're going to talk a little bit about something Tony Vitello said this week in terms of the approach of this team compared to previous teams. We'll discuss that next, and we'll look ahead to Cincinnati, Wake Forest, who they play today. The Arkansas Regional looks like it's going to be Arkansas out there if Tennessee gets through Knoxville. We'll get to all that, and then we got football to come. So come on back on the Sports Source. And welcome back in to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. Boy, they carry every kind of boat you can imagine. Godfrey Aqua Patio, Hurricane, Suncatcher Pontoons, G3, Skeeter, on and on and on. So many brands, so many models of boats. You can do all your shopping on one lot in one showroom. Since 1976, there's been no better place to buy a boat than Madisonville Marine. Get down and see them at Highway 411 North in Madisonville. All right. John Pennington back with Andrew Lee, A.J. Simcox, and Will Heflin. And we got a comment here from Tony Vitello. And I thought this was interesting. And even he says it right off the top. It sounds a little negative, but it's a little more calm and confident group than we've had. In 2022, it was like I had to play policeman every day to tame that group down a little bit. They were wild. It was kind of what made them go in 2022. And I think our guys in 25, we had to figure out what makes them go. But they've also kind of had to sort through that a little bit too. We had fireworks with the Vanderbilt game, and I think, this is my perspective, both teams were equally guilty of that. It was just the nature of a very competitive series here in Knoxville. And I don't know if this was the case for our guys, but I don't think they do very well with the whole, let's go out and kill these guys and let's go out and dominate. It's better when they're more relaxed and they just go out and play and keep it simple. Okay, Will, you ended that last segment by bringing this up and saying you think that it may be paying off at this point. Do you think, because that's a very look, fans love that stuff. You know, I had somebody, the first comment under I don't know if you saw it, first comment on YouTube under your guys' show the other day was, you guys are overanalyzing it. It's basically, they just got to want it more. And I thought, thank you for telling these 3 former Vol baseball players that they're overanalyzing what goes into a game. It's all about want to. But fans and media enjoy seeing a team that wants to kill somebody. They got that fire. In reality, not all teams are the same. Teams are built differently. Do you think this team missed some of that? During the regular season, when it was struggling at times, do you think that was because, well, they lacked fire? Or, they're just a business-like team. That isn't why they were struggling. Where are you on that?
You're right. Each team's got to be a different concoction of loose and aggressive. And I think this team, maybe more so than the previous one for sure. And a lot of it's due to the transfer portal era and just the nature of baseball being such a peculiar game at times. But I mentioned, I almost think that they're kind of taking the same demeanor that they have all year. And now with the postseason and other teams being more emotional and maybe a bit more of a roller coaster, this team seems very steady right now. They're playing very simple baseball. It doesn't seem like they're too worried about what's going on the next inning or it's just the next pitch. And I think that's been a really good approach and has allowed them to play from ahead.
Thoughts? Did they miss some of the previous year's fire and craziness, or it's just a business-like team?
I'd say it's more business-like, and maybe it's the NIL era that's basically turned these guys into professional baseball players, because that's always the knock on a pitcher or a player. I'll use Drew Gilbert as an example. Oh, when he gets to pro ball, he's not going to be able to play with that energy for 160 games. And now that these guys are more professional in the way that they're getting paid and approaching the game, maybe that's taken some of that overreaching fire out of them. But I feel like a team is always going to march to the beat of maybe their 1 or 2 core guys. And last year was that last class that had played with the Drew Gilbert and the Jordan Becks of the world, who were throwing bats and making gestures to outfielders. Yeah. But I think these guys have that level-headed approach, and even though they're getting knocked for it maybe through the regular season, as Will mentioned, that's exactly what drives success in the postseason. When everyone's heart starts beating a little bit faster, they can kind of keep that level head.
AJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've taken on the identity of Hunter Ensley, right? I mean, I think he is the leader. He's Mr. Vol. He's in his 5th year, and he's pretty conservative, but he's very intense on the field. I mean, we saw it last year in the College World Series. He does play with emotion, but he's very business-oriented. And in the Vandy series, he did get a little chippy too, and I think that's a good thing. But I also think, I mean, baseball is just a sport that it's difficult to see how hard guys are playing. It's not like football. It's not like basketball. Sometimes when things are going bad, it just looks like you're not giving effort. But honestly, they're probably trying too hard, and that's what's causing them to play not up to their standard.
Do you think there's anything? I mean, here's the deal. Tony Vitello is a pretty fiery guy. You played for him. His emotions are on the sleeve quite a bit. Do you think it was more difficult for him to figure that this much? Because maybe they're not as keyed up as those previous teams, which seemed to match his personality a little bit more.
I just think it was so unique in the way that it played out. You know, this team never got swept. A couple guys were on the record saying that he was the same all the way throughout. And I think, you know, he's in his 8th year, but he's still relatively young, being a head coach. And one thing he's always been willing to do is adapt and change. And I think he's trying to match his team constantly. Whatever that group may be, he's trying to find the best combination for himself to get the best out of those guys. And so, you know, whether or not he's going to make that click, however long he's here, there's going to be years where it just doesn't, right?
Yeah.
But what makes them so good is they're able to keep pushing different buttons until they figure out what works.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the best managers, best coaches in the world are the ones who can figure out okay, this team doesn't react. He doesn't respond to this, it responds to that. I got to find out what that is because my previous teams have done this. I know this. I got to figure this out. And it looks like they may have done that. Is there any chance? I mean, I wondered with that first group in 2022, the way they were the villains of college baseball. Earlier in one of the shows this year, you said this team has no problem being the villains. But then that really didn't turn out to be this team's persona. They don't go in like the WWE bad guy, the heel. Do you think that plays into any of the players' minds at all? It would be like if you go to Miami. You guys are too young for this. Bad example. Miami football used to be just the bad guys of sport. And everybody that came in there, it was like the next wave had to be as bad as the last guys. We're going to get flagged for this and that and the other. Does any of that play into, well, I've signed with Tennessee, I've seen these guys do this, but that's not my personality? Or do guys just go out there and play ball? Do you think that weighs into it? Is there any kind of, this is the school's persona that they take on or no?
I think it's more of the approach to trying to be elite in some way. Now guys are more taking the, I'm going to get ready for professional baseball approach. I'll take Marcus Phillips as an example. Extremely talented athlete, but has been developing his whole time here. Then we have the Liam Doyle who comes in as a junior, already polished, and he's become the fire on Friday night. And I think it's been a little bit of two different teams depending on who's throwing. When we play on Friday night, Liam is very explosive on the mound. He's going to let you know that he just struck you out. And then we go to Saturday, Marcus is a little bit more reserved, still an incredible pitcher, but I think sometimes the team doesn't get as loud, maybe for that atmosphere, for whatever reason. So sometimes it's the guy who's on the mound who's setting the tone in that regard.
It's all about wins. As long as you're winning, who cares about the personality stuff?
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. When we come back, I want to talk to these guys. Tennessee's got a game tonight at 6 o'clock. They're going to play the winner of Cincinnati or Wake Forest. If you get through that one, well, you've actually got two games. So if you win that one tonight, you've got tomorrow. Is that right? Yeah. Win tonight, it's over. Yeah. But you could play tomorrow if you lose tonight. Either way, you'd have to lose twice to be out of it. Arkansas, it appears, is next. Let's talk about Arkansas and what's coming next for Tennessee. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Pipe Wrench. Summer is here. Heat is only going to go up and up and up. Is your AC unit ready to handle it? Pipe Wrench can replace your old unit before you have an emergency need. Visit pipewrench.com to learn more about all they do: drain cleaning, plumbing, heating, and cooling. Probably don't need heating at the moment, but cooling, although you may need a new water heater, you never know. Pipe Wrench, folks to call. They've taken care of me at my house, had a great experience with them. You will too, pipewrench.com. All right, back with former Vol baseball players, VFLs. You wouldn't believe the amount of emails I get when I say former Vols from people. They're VFLs, they're not former. And that may have changed in the transfer portal era, though. I don't know if some of these guys are former or not. Andrew Lee, A.J. Simcox, and Will Heflin right here. Guys, you've got Tennessee taking on Cincinnati or Wake Forest, whoever wins the first game. They'll be playing at 6 o'clock tonight. You win that, you're into the Super Regional. You lose that, and this is what I was trying to say going to break. You lose that, you would have to come back, and the team that beat you today would have to beat you a second time. So Tennessee, in good shape right now, would have to lose 2 in a row. If you get through this one, then you are looking at the Fayetteville Regional, which Arkansas has taken control of that regional the same way Tennessee has, and in kind of a surprise, the number 2 team out there, Kansas, they're already out. So it is North Dakota State, a team with a losing record, Creighton, and Arkansas left out in Fayetteville. Andrew, I'll start with you on this one. Thoughts about Tennessee's path? How does it look to you at this point, or are you sitting there more concerned about, I'll tell you after tonight's game?
My one concern for tonight's game is it's going to turn into a bullpen game for both teams. Cincinnati and Wake Forest are both going to be out of pitching. Tennessee is probably going to start with Tegan Kuhns, I'd have to imagine, and then turn it into a bullpen game after that. Now, the pessimist would say that's a problem. Our bullpen has been an issue this year. But I think we can lean back on the offense a little bit, especially after the consistency they've shown this weekend. And then looking forward to Arkansas, who's been on cruise control through most of their regional. That one puts the scaries in me a little bit. Great pitching, great hitting, tough series against them at Arkansas last time that we played them this year. So it's not going to be an easy road, especially compared to what we've seen in the last couple of years.
Lost 2 out of 3 to end the regular season at Arkansas. I told you that the host wouldn't interrupt you on this show. AJ, your thoughts on what's coming up this evening? How do you feel about this team facing Cincinnati, Wake Forest, getting through Knoxville, first of all? The fact that you've got a game to play with, that's not the way that Tony Vitello would put it, but it'll take 2 to lose. You've got to feel somewhat good about getting out of this side of it.
I mean, you've put yourself in about as good of a position as you can. You've got a surplus of bullpen arms ready to rock and roll today. It's a great opportunity for them to gain a little confidence, gain some momentum, and if they go out and they pitch well, then you are very confident heading into Arkansas next weekend. I think, and another thing too is Cincinnati or Wake Forest, whoever we play, their arms are depleted. I mean, Wake Forest won 14-13 yesterday. Yeah. Cincinnati threw a lot of arms against us. Then they're going to have to come back and play against each other today, this morning, and then the winner faces us. So I mean, you've put yourself in a great spot. Arkansas, I mean, this time of year, all of these teams are very talented, so it's just going to be who plays better. I mean, it's not something that Arkansas is significantly more talented than us. Arguably, you could say that we have the more talented roster. It's just going to be who plays better.
How much does – go ahead, Will.
I was just going to say, you're rooting for Cincinnati and Wake to play a 14-inning, 20-21 game. Both of those teams are playing their game 3 this morning, and then they'll have to turn around and play a game 4. So Tennessee in the driver's seat there. I think if you're Vol fans, you kind of wish they had gotten the 15 or 16 seed, because you look across the way, the 1 and the 2 in the tournament are both playing in the losers bracket in the early window. So you got matched up with Arkansas. They look like they're cruising through, caught a little break with Kansas. Yeah. Probably their toughest matchup, being the 2 seed, similar to Tennessee, not even having to face them yet. But I think the biggest thing for Tennessee going into that environment, if you can get ahead, we've seen in years past that really, really strong home environment, home field advantage can turn against the Razorbacks, and they've lost some series that they shouldn't have in previous years and not made it to Omaha as a number 1 seed or a top 5 seed. So if you're Tennessee, you've got to use that as your leverage going in, but it's going to be tough regardless. That you're talking about 2 of the top 4 teams in terms of odds to make it or win the College World Series.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I thank you all for coming in. Will, AJ, Andrew. You can see them Tuesday. We'll be putting up another episode of Hardball. I will extract myself from that show, and it'll just be these guys talking ball. And I do want to say before you get out of here, for those of you at home who sit there and you pull for players who wear the orange, very impressed with these guys. And now that I'm it's funny, I'm still 25 in my head, just trapped in a 50-year-old man's body, an ugly 50-year-old man's body. But it's hard for me to look at it and say, wow, these are good kids. You're good young men. You represent your university well. Check out Hardball on the Sports Source Digital Network. We'll be back to talk a little football. Good job, guys. Appreciate it. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. I was out of town a couple of days last weekend. That's why Josh handled the show last Sunday. Did a nice job with it. But while I was away, I had no worries about my home. And if you knew where I lived and you drove by that house, you'd know why. It's because I have one of those nice big Safety Systems signs right in my yard. You feel protected when you've got a Safety Systems security system. Folks, you can watch everything. You can monitor your house. You can open and shut doors. You can turn on and off lights, all from your cell phone, a million miles away. SafetySystems.com is the best group in town in terms of security systems, I promise you. That's why you see that logo in business windows and in front yards like mine all over East Tennessee. Okay, we got 2 segments here called Read and React. I'm going to read you some quotes and you guys can react. That's how this works. First one, Athlon. Every year they do a thing. You used to do this for Lindy's Guide, where you'd go and talk to coaches and you'd give them anonymity, which would allow them to be honest and speak about other programs.
But I've obviously retired.
You've retired, yeah, clearly. Clearly. By the way, can you come over Tuesday and take sure. Athlon put out their posts this week, and it's some coaches talking about Tennessee. And here's the first one. Get your take on this. Losing Nico Iamaleava isn't good. They're not replacing him with a more talented quarterback, and they're losing the quarterback who ran their system in a playoff game. But because of the way everything went down, I don't think anyone blames the program or Josh Heupel. And with the turnover on defense, Nico leaving makes a transition year a lot easier to stomach. Reactions?
I don't even think you needed to be anonymous to say that. I think it's a very popular take that we heard from whoever that was, and I think I haven't heard anyone say anything contrary to that. And maybe while he led you to the playoff, a lot of that had to do with the run game too, not necessarily because of arm talent. So
yeah, the defense.
Exactly. And obviously a lot of it is you're coming from App State, and who is Joey Aguilar? What will he give you in the SEC? It's bigger, faster, better. You have the fall camp still to go through, and maybe getting familiarized with the playbook will help him a lot. He obviously was good enough to get to UCLA, so is it that much more of a transition to get to the SEC? I'm not sure, but I think that's a pretty standard take there.
The only thing that surprised me out of that was the defense. I don't think there are a lot of Vol fans talking about how many starters they've lost on defense and it being a transition year. I think it is a transition year. I think it's a rebuilding year, but I don't know that a lot of fans accept that.
I think they'll be fine on their front 6 or 7, depending on what they use. The secondary concerns me. Okay. You've lost, at least I think for at least the first month, your best cornerback.
And then how healthy is he when he does come back?
Right, and then it's safety. I don't know. So I think the front 7. I think the defense will actually be decent enough. But the part about giving Heupel a pass and Tennessee a pass, it depends on where you are. You get a pass probably if you're 8-4. You're not getting one if you're 6-6.
He won't get a pass. Coaches don't get passes anymore. They should, but they won't. I don't think.
So you think at 8-4 they'll be on him?
Oh, I think you'll have people calling for his head. Yeah, I do.
Wow.
At 8-4.
Yeah. No, that doesn't mean it'll be the majority.
Well, you call for his head.
No, well, I wouldn't. I've already said. I've already said that he's shown you enough that you need to work with him and continue to see where this thing goes.
Right.
But there will be those people, they'll be calling into shows and they'll be on the message board saying, okay, he's been here 5 years. He doesn't have an SEC title. We got to move on. He's not the guy. You'll get that. Year 5, there's no excuse for being 8-4. You'll get that. They don't give passes anymore. All right, I'm going to get Vince and Josh to weigh in on these next 3 comments. Let's put them all up at once. These are all 3 different coaches, I suppose. They don't really tell you, but I'll guess it is. The offense won't fall off a cliff. That system is effective at adjusting for personnel, even the quarterback. All right, the next one. You'll love this one, Jimmy. The bigger question, even after Nico, is replacing the defensive starters who carried them in big games. The secondary is legit and probably their strength, Jimmy.
No.
Did you say this?
What do you know, Jimmy?
What do they know?
They're going to take a step back and won't be a playoff team this season, but the quarterback play won't be awful. There's a ringing endorsement.
Wow.
Josh and Vince, reactions, pick one of those and go with it.
Yeah, I would say the last quote is, I guess they're trying to be nice because won't be awful doesn't mean will be good. Those
Right.
Yeah, but the first quote of talking about the system, I think that is the hope that a lot of fans have is that, okay, you have to have this quick transition at quarterback, you have this battle, but the offense has a higher floor. So if the quarterback play does drop off, the offense itself can kind of deal with, like Aguilar, if he's the starter and he had some issues turning the ball over, that they can keep that from happening because of what Josh Heupel runs with the offense. I think that's a lot of the hope is that you at least keep the floor higher because of what Heupel has done offensively with different personnel even when he arrived.
Well, I think that's a question, though. What are they going to lean on? They don't have Dylan Sampson to lean on. They don't have veteran offensive linemen to lean on. They don't have 2 tight ends that they can go to 12 personnel on. So, that insinuation, I don't know. Yes, there's talent there that is young that you hope develops, but I think there's still plenty of questions there. The first quote of the offense not falling off of a cliff. You're talking about falling off of a cliff from 2022 or the last 2 years? Because
it's already fallen off from 2022.
Right.
Not off a cliff, but it's fallen.
Because I read into that the Heupel reputation of every year having great offenses. They got a great running game and they manage games differently, but they didn't have a great passing game. So there's not a cliff to fall off from.
There's a hill to fall off.
That's right.
One thing I always wonder about when I read these things is how much do these guys follow the other programs? Now, I know you sit there and you study it game week, and you know the ins and outs of what their offense does and that kind of thing. But you always get some comments in there that I'm like, I think he's running his own team. I think he's getting headlines. His SID is telling him the latest from Knoxville or the latest from Lexington. I don't know how involved these guys. I mean, again, the secondary is the strength of your team. Your offense isn't going to fall off a cliff. Well, it's already dropped off from 2022. Yeah. Is there? Do you think you've interviewed these guys, and so were you wasting our time when you were doing it? I mean, do you think these guys are really sitting there paying close attention to everybody in the league, or are they too busy running their own thing and they're just going by? Everybody says they're really good on offense.
Full disclosure, if they said something really stupid, I didn't use it.
Oh, there you go. So that would have been edited out.
I think there's an assumption that Jamon McCoy will just be back. You'll see him on every preseason All-American team, and it'll probably be a few weeks in. So I think there's an assumption that's being made that actually has to be proven.
And I still worry about guys coming back from an ACL.
And I think to what you were saying, too, like, do they actually watch it? Goes to my first comment. Like, all of these comments are with such a broad paintbrush.
Yes.
Not awful, will be okay. The secondary will be great. Okay, those are headlines, you know, so how deep are you getting into it? I think they could be excited with defense when you get guys like Joshua Josephs back and what PFF is saying about them, but not everyone's a Will West and is watching 80 hours a game a week, so.
That's right. Kirby Smart's running his own program.
Right.
He's trying to make sure, you know, how many guys have gotten arrested for speeding today? He doesn't have time to sit there. He'll watch Tennessee game week or the 3 weeks leading up to it. I don't know how much he's sitting there studying UT's team at this moment.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think you got time to do that with 15 SEC rivals.
I will say, if you see an opponent and you play them or you study them last year, I think coaches don't have to dig into as much tape to come to some of those assumptions that we hear in the anonymous quotes. If you don't play a team, then yeah, maybe you are so locked into your team, you didn't dive into any tape, and maybe that's where you might be a little bit off if it's a team that you didn't study last year.
True, but would you call any of those quotes insightful?
No, it's a broad paintbrush.
I would expect a coach could give me.
You could go on the street and find someone to say that right now.
Yeah, I mean, any of us could say this.
Jimmy did.
The one thing I would say is that there seems to be I think they all share the opinion that there's a drop-off from the team's success. Yeah. I didn't get any kind of playoff expectation from any of those quotes.
No. In fact, the one guy says they won't make the playoff. All right. When we come back, now this is more important. Some NFL coaches are sounding off on Tennessee's offensive system. Is that going to hurt Tennessee on the recruiting trail? We'll tell you more about that next. Come on back on the Sports Source. And welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Finding yourself spending more time at home these days? Well, then make sure your home is a fun place to be. Games and Things carries card tables, pool tables, ping pong tables, foosball tables, air hockey tables, a lot of tables. But they also carry classic arcade games and all the accoutrements that go with all of those tables. If you're just looking for a dartboard, if you're just looking for a pool cue, they got it all. OurGameRoom.com is where you can learn more, but trust me, do yourself a favor, go to their showroom. We've all been to their showroom. It's a heck of a showroom. It's a fun place to go. Games and Things, the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road, because life should be fun. Okay, we got to race through this, which stinks because I wanted to get into it. SEC coaches aren't the only ones talking about Tennessee. The NFL guys aren't doing Josh Heupel any favors. 2 weeks ago, we played you a clip on this show of Dante Thornton saying that Pete Carroll asked him before the draft or right around the draft, what about your route running? Can you run a full route tree? And Dante Thornton said, I told him, go check the Oregon tape. And the guy I was doing the show with was a draftnik. And he said, yeah, just go look at the Oregon tape where you ran a full route tree. Okay, and you had asked Josh Heupel about it, and he pushed back on that. Yeah. He didn't like that idea. All right, well, Titans coach Brian Callahan recently talked about how college passing games are different than the NFL passing attacks, where you don't have as many anticipatory throws. But he singled out Heupel's system. Let's go ahead and put this up. The University of Tennessee, that's a spread out that system. That's spread out that system. And so sometimes those are, as you say, predetermined throws. The ball's going here no matter what. It looks like they're doing it quickly, but they may not really be seeing anything of substance, meaning they're not doing the read thing there. All right, so fast forward. This week, Cowboys coach Brian Schottenheimer was talking about Joe Milton, who's now a Cowboy, and he said, Joe is a guy that we obviously know all about the talent, but the system that he came from in Tennessee creates some challenges in terms of what he has to learn and things like that. Folks, I don't think Josh Heupel will want that out there. Look, I've been told that negative recruiting isn't a big deal, but everybody does it for a reason. That would seem like things that could hurt you on the recruiting trail. The more people are saying it. True, false? I mean, now that they're kind of coming in waves.
I think it's easy. Like, you have a target, and everyone can just pile on it.
Yeah, but why would
you could go for quarterbacks alone.
Why would these guys be targeting Tennessee, though, is my only.
I think they targeted Mac Jones after Josh McDaniels left, and he had kind of a fall off. And you have Matt Patricia, and he didn't do very well. So I think the quarterback position is always just kind of a wash anyway. So many of those first round number one draft picks never really pan out. I think maybe what should concern you more than negative recruiting is about the wide receiving route or tree, not so much about Joe Milton. I mean,
well, no, I'm just saying that the system. He's saying that you can't really teach you. You were having to reteach the guy, basically. I just think that's not something. If I'm the daddy of a 5-star quarterback, and Josh Heupel had no trouble recruiting 5-star quarterbacks, but that would concern me that I'm going to have to relearn my kid after he's done at UT.
So here's the way I see this debate. So if you're recruiting a kid and you say, look at that 2022 offense, average 46 points and 525 yards, or are you trying to get that guy ready for the NFL? What's more appealing to that player, to be productive in the college system or to prepare for the NFL? And I think you're going to find some that would rather be prepared for the NFL. So they're going to see some of these quotes and say, I don't know, that might not be the best system, so I'm going to go to this other school that makes me more pro-ready. I think it could have an impact.
I think so, too. On the other hand, if you're Josh Heupel, you're saying, was Hendon Hooker on anybody's draft list before he got into my system?
That's right.
Before we went for those huge yards, was Jalen Hyatt on anybody's Biletnikoff watch list? So you could make the case the other way, but I'm with you. I think the more people say this, the more it becomes a concern.
Well, and while that debate is still out there, in the meantime, they need some of the players from the system to succeed in the NFL.
Yes.
And then that will validate his system and move people towards the argument of, hey, you can do both. And getting you prepared for the NFL comes as a after effect of having a successful college career under our system.
Final word.
Yeah, so far Josh Heupel has beaten those comments when it comes to recruiting quarterbacks. He couldn't have done better so far in 3 straight classes. Faison Brandon committed. It's an important year for guys like Mike Matthews, Travis Smith, elite talents who have come in at wide receiver to develop in this offense and show they can, because they're next level talents, I think most people believe, to show that on the field in the system and then produce down the line in the professional ranks.
All right. When we come back, kickoff times for Tennessee's first 3 games are now known. Did you fans get what you wanted? I got what I wanted. We'll talk about early kickoff times next on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. Folks, if you want more content like this, then you can catch it Saturdays at 11 right here on WATE6, the Sports Source Saturday Kickoff, and then you can catch it all week long. Sports Source Digital Network. You saw Will, Andrew, and AJ out here talking baseball. They're up there on the site as well. A lot of the people here on this show have been there. Sports Source Digital Network, that's a free channel on YouTube. Check it out this week. And the game times have been set for Tennessee's first 3 games. And the beauty here is why I'm happy. You see there on the left, and we're going to have an 11 a.m. pregame show every week here. The Saturday kickoff goes back to football only in football season, and we will be the live lead-in to Tennessee's opener between Tennessee and Syracuse at noon. Then you got 3:30 ETSU and 3:30 Tennessee, Georgia, and as you see over there on the right, those 2 games that are ABC, well, that means right here on WATE6. The folks here at 6 are happy as well, Syracuse and Georgia. My question is, we got about 3 minutes here, are fans happy? I like day games. I grew up in a day when Tennessee played a lot of day games. You didn't have every game on television, so you weren't playing as many night games. And now it's become such a thing because Michael Strickland, the guys at Bandit Lights, have turned that into the show palace. I saw where EA Sports put out a thing this week, and one of the ones they showed with what we've got this year is the light show at UT at night. I just wonder, with all that going on, though, do fans now prefer the night games? If you gave them a choice, 3:30, 8 o'clock, I don't think anybody's picking noon like I would, but 3:30 or 8 o'clock, I think a lot of fans would say, give me the 8 o'clock. Am I right or wrong on that?
I think a lot would for the big games. So the Georgia game, because I think fans are also hoping for a competitive advantage. Night game, better atmosphere, elite atmosphere in college football at home against Georgia. You're trying to pull off the upset. ETSU, I think people want that one earlier. The Kent State game was a late kickoff last year for Kent State, which was criminal. So I think it depends on the opponent. Mississippi State, you play that kind of opponent, move that one up. Georgia and Alabama game, you want that one later.
I love sitting at the 5 a.m. doing this show, getting it ready for Kent State after a Kent State game. That's fantastic. Night game, day game, what do you think the fans want?
Yeah, Josh is right. Night game for big games. Day games, 3:30 gives you an opportunity for traveling in to get there and then maybe get home at a good hour as well. The 3:30 game for Georgia, it's unfortunate that it's not a CBS game anymore. That was a big time spot. Yeah. Now it's just ESPN, ABC. They all look the same. They all sound the same.
Hey. You can see it right here on WATE.
No, I'm just talking about.
No, I know. ABC and ESPN look the same.
Right. So
and ESPN
it was different. So all the production is just, it looks like the same. So, I think it just depends on the game.
CBS gets one game a week, and they do it like it's a Super Bowl.
Right.
And it has its own look. There's no question. Yep. And now it's a Big Ten game that nobody around here cares about. Thought night game or day game, which do you prefer?
I prefer night games. I think for recruiting, maybe you prefer the 3:30 game. See them a little bit before, see them a little bit after. Say you do beat an Alabama or Georgia, and that's good talk and FaceTime with your recruits. But I think night games are always more fun.
Give me day games. I'm not recruiting.
Day games for me. All right. Thanks to all these folks. Vince, Jimmy, Josh, Paige. Josh, thanks again for last week. Good job. Thanks to all our sponsors for presenting this show year-round. This will be our 23rd football season, which is just incredible. So thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you. If you're not visiting the sponsors, we go away. So thank you. We're here because of you. See you next week, right back here.